Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, February 8th, 2018 meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. I'm Board President Rochelle Sherris-Watt, and I will now take roll. Director Deppie?
Here.
Director Hasai?
Here.
Vice President Natoli? Here. Unfortunately, Director Welsh will not be able to join us this evening. We will now take public comments on items not appearing on the agenda.
A. Stevens Delk. Chris, I'd like to just say that I am the canary in the technology mine, and I have been flying around the new website and haven't bumped into anything major yet. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony Knight, sort of a broken record on this subject, but I was at the fire board meeting last night. I thought it was a very critical meeting having to do with assessing the feasibility of either remodeling or closer, a little closer, okay. So I'm basically concerned that none of the board was at the fire board meeting. And I don't see any of the fire board directors here tonight. And there is this elephant in the corner of the room, which is the public safety building doesn't meet current needs, is going to have to be either rebuilt or renovated. And the two districts have to cooperate on this. So I know you've been good in the past. I've seen some of your faces there, but you know, this is now, and going forward, I'd dearly like to see more cooperation between the two.
Thank you. All right, comments from, oh, please.
I think I have to grow or get a new pair of glasses. Maybe both. Celia Conkas. I'm here to reading a statement that Marilyn Stolen wrote because she was having back problems and couldn't come this evening. And I'll paraphrase a little bit. So this is Marilyn Stolen writing. There has been much talk about our police staffing relative to budget and safety concerns, and I want to present some facts for the record. We
do have this item on our agenda. I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh,
So.
no, that's fine.
Thank you. Sorry. We'll just.
Well, it's not really about police staffing, but I guess if I'm ruled against, I'll just wait too. Excuse me, Mabry Benson here. Several citizens have been claiming that we have a perfectly good police department, yet there are many who dispute that. We have had boards who have refused to acknowledge that there are any problems at all, let alone look for ways to correct the problems such as improper behavior and excessive legal expenses as a result of that behavior. The Reno incident was the catalyst that ignited the community to demand that we start to address such issues. The ad hoc committee was a first step, but a citizen committee is not in any position to evaluate problems the district faces, problems that go beyond bad police behavior, and these would include pension costs and organizational issues. The community elected new board members who promised to look into these matters. They started by separating chief of police from the general manager and hiring an experienced and knowledgeable general manager, letting our chief of police devote himself entirely to policing. They have hired an acknowledged expert firm to evaluate issues and solutions. We need to let the Matrix firm do just that. As an added comment, I know that many are concerned that in possible contracting, because that's not a done deal, we're all waiting for that report from Matrix, that we will lose fine officers. But all departments we talked to said that our officers could apply. I say that if these other departments reject any of our officers, why would we want to have them here on our force? Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the board? All right, I never hesitate
no.
to comment.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to announce, and there will be more publicity on this, but we do have a date for the first Matrix community meeting, so I wanted to let everyone here know, to note March 17th, the morning of March 17th, in your calendars. That will be the first meeting that will be run by the Matrix community, the Matrix Consulting Group. Yes, that will be in the community center. I know, I'll try to serve maybe green creamer for the coffee.
All righty. As Dr. Delk mentioned, that we do have a new website, and we invite you to explore and engage with it. Our old website was hacked twice. Therefore, we have removed that from the public consumption completely. And it will take some time because we would like to put original documents on the new website rather than retrieve them from the old, because as Director Deppie has told me, we don't know how the old site was infected. So to prevent any damage to the new site or to anyone's computer, we've let that site go quiet. The Finance Committee will be meeting. We have a tentative meeting date of March 1st. So those interested in attending, there'll be more information on the website. And I wanted to mention that the Public Safety Building Coordinator is Director Welsh, and I'm sure he would like to speak to that issue, but he is charged with addressing the ongoing issue of our improvements to the public safety building. Any staff comment? Nope. All righty. We'll move on to item 4, the consent calendar. Is there any comment from board members? I had one question. Sylvia, is it NanoWall? N-A-N-O?
It's N-A-N-A.
Oh, NanoWall. Okay.
Wall.
All right. Are there any comments from the public? All right. Pardon? What is the website? The website address is KPPCSD.org. Our initials. It replaces KensingtonCalifornia.org because it's the acronym of our official name. But you can go to KensingtonCalifornia.org and you should be redirected.
Yes, now you're redirected.
Redirected. So
Right.
if anyone forgets, and we will have new web addresses when you write to directors, but you can use our old ones for quite a while, and you'll still be able to contact us. We'll just.
I should say that some people have emailed me with questions and comments about the website, but not many, maybe 2 or 3. So I'm sure that other people may have, comments or questions or maybe missing content. So don't be shy. Go ahead and email me, and I'm happy to hear from you.
All right, we diverted there a little bit. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the consent calendar. Any second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. The motion passes 4-0, and we adopt the consent calendar. For a few moments, I'd like to skip the matter of old business in order to move on to item 6A and introduce to you Nathan Russell, who is here with the Nixle Emergency Service, and he's going to describe what Nixle is and how it can benefit the Kensington community.
Thank you, Rochelle. My name is Nathan. You can lift that. Thank you. So I'm here representing a company called Nixle. It's an emergency notification system. If y'all are familiar with the fires here in the North Bay, it was used heavily by Napa County. There's 8 agencies in Napa that utilize our platform. Marin County Sheriff uses the system. Here in Berkeley, your neighbors also use the system. So it's a way for your public safety officials to better serve your community by providing you with timely information if there is any sort of incidents in your community. It's not solely emergency information that can be pushed through the system. You can also send out community-related event information. I live in Alameda, and there's 3 departments in Alameda that use the system. It's the police department, the fire department, and public works. So I get all sorts of information regarding traffic, and last year there was an incident where there was the water was affected, so I got information about don't drink the water for 24 hours. There's a lot of good information that you're able to push through, and it allows you to sign up if you choose to receive these notifications. You can go to the website, and there will be a place within the website where you can fill in your information and sign up to receive these alerts from the police department or any other department that wants to participate in the program. I'm happy to open it up for questions or comments, but really I just wanted to take a moment to introduce the service. As mentioned, there's a number of communities here in the East Bay that use it. El Cerrito, San Pablo, and Berkeley are the closest to you, and I've worked with a number of other communities as well.
So Nathan, this is different than the last meeting we introduced the Contra Costa Community Warning System. And all of you are automatically signed up for that through your, if you still have, a landline. But you could also, and we're going to promote this and push this for the community, receive those alerts through your cellular devices as well. But Nixle operates solely through cellular service, is that correct?
So it's cell phone and it's emails. So you would be receiving, and you as your, the community as your residents have the ability to determine, what types of information and how you wanted to receive it. So it could be through a text message or an email, and there's different levels of notifications that you can choose to opt into or completely not receive.
So could you describe for us exactly, let's say Chief Hull wants to create come and have coffee with the chief, just a community event, and how would he do that with the Nixle system, and then how would the end users receive that?
Sure. So with our service, it's a software as a service, so there's no hardware deployed. You would have access through an internet-capable device, so a computer, a tablet, or your cell phone, and this allows you to initiate the messages. So it's an interface that you would sign onto, you would craft your message, you would send it out to the community, and then that would be received by your residents via text message or emails.
And if, let's say, residents it was during an emergency, can you tell about, let's say they were searching for Kensington, maybe they're in Alameda, having lunch for the day, they hear Kensington, and they haven't signed up for the service. Can you describe how Nixle, what platforms it works on? We talked about the Google search and the...
Sure. So we will also enable you to broadcast messages through social media channels like Facebook, Twitter, if you're using those, but also increase your reach by deploying that message through Google. So we're one of the only vendors in the emergency notification space that has this plug-in with Google. So as an example, my best friend lived in Napa up on Mount Veeder, and unfortunately he lost his house. I am not opted in to any of Napa's alerts, but when those fires occurred and they were on the news, I went to Google and simply searched out Napa, California. That was the trigger for Napa's notifications that they've sent out through Nixle to be published on Google. So despite the fact that I was not opted in to Napa's alerts, I was still able to see the evacuation notices that they were publishing and information that they were pushing out to their community. So again, regardless of where I am located, I'm originally from Massachusetts. My parents still reside in Massachusetts. I've opted in to receive information from my local community back in Massachusetts, despite the fact that I live here in Alameda. So there's a number of different ways where you can, tap into additional information. So Google is one of them. There's another system that you would potentially have access to called iPause, which would allow you to initiate an emergency alert for anything life or property impacting. So if in the event that there was like a missing person or, God forbid, an earthquake or tsunami, you could initiate that message to your entire jurisdiction, and it would go out to all the cell phones. So if anybody has ever received an Amber Alert, that is coming from a system like the Nixle system, where you get that on your cell phone.
And somewhat similar vein, we're obviously in between Berkeley and El Cerrito. So if Berkeley were to say there's a massive wildfire, how would we learn about that? We either have to be signed up to Berkeley, or when Berkeley might put out some kind of notice and our fire department saw it, then they would then notify people on our Nixle?
So that's correct. You could receive that information from other jurisdictions and then disseminate that information accordingly. You as residents have the ability to opt into as many communities as you would like. There's a number of ways that you can do that. One is by going through an opt-in portal on the website. But one thing that is unique to us is we have an easy opt-in solution where you would simply take out your cell phone and text your zip code to 888-777. So that is the trigger to sign up for any community's alerts. So for Alameda, if you wanted to receive information from Alameda, you would simply take out your cell phone and text 94501, or for San Francisco, 94105. So, Berkeley shares zip code here, which is 94707. So in essence, you could take out your cell phone right now and text 94707 to 888-777, no spaces, and that will opt you in to receive Berkeley's notifications. The other way that you could do it, which I think would be more effective, is you could create keywords. So you could create a keyword, call it Kensington, or however you would want to brand it, and then the trigger would be to text that keyword to 888-777. The nice thing about this is it allows you to create groups based on those keywords. So if you have a special event, or if you have a topic that you wanted to, like this agenda meeting, you could create a keyword for those agenda meetings and have people opt in, and now you can push information to their cell phones and their emails regarding that information.
So last week, Mr. Russell and I talked, and he showed me all the variations, and like, for example, Washington, D.C., when they want to promote, let's say, a 4th of July event, people can opt in to receive that information on a special keyword through Nixle. And Nixle is often used, I know, by parents in Kensington because kids go to high school often at El Cerrito High, and so they opt into the El Cerrito system. So frequently, I've seen notifications from El Cerrito High. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, they had a lockdown there. There were issues with traffic surrounding that, and that was all carried on the Nixle system. So parents were not driving down there en masse or trying to drive on closed streets. They were able to see through the Nixle system where they should go and what they should do.
Have you talked to the fire department about this?
I have not.
We have discussed that we would, unfortunately, it is really a per agency cost, and we'll ask you to talk about the cost in a moment, but we would definitely think that this is something that they should also be promoting and engaging.
Right, because they would be in charge of fire alerts and maybe paramedics or other things like that, so.
Absolutely.
Because we've got two districts in Kensington and have, separate functions, so.
Sure.
Would there be any conflicts if they had it and we had it as far as what Kensington means? Would it mean both of us, or?
What Kensington?
Well, Kensington keyword, so.
Keyword. You could create a keyword that said Kensington FD for fire department, or Kensington, however you wanted to brand it, and that would completely separate the notifications.
Well, I mean, what if you just wanted to get notifications from both the fire department and the police district?
So there's a number of different ways that you can set it up. You could have one system for the entire jurisdiction, and that would be essentially a shared platform between all departments, but there are some risks involved in that sense. Basically, depending on how well you work together with other departments, if you have,
That's a different district, it's not a department, but.
okay, districts. So, again, I would suggest that you separate it. You have one for your district and maybe one for their district, which keeps it separate. And in that instance, your residents would have to go to the website and sign up for both.
I think that's a little confusing, because people just want to get alerts for Kensington, whether it's police or fire.
This is what happens in other cities too, though. I mean, other jurisdictions have multiple departments, and you may not want the solid waste notices, that they're not coming that day or whatever. So this is not just unique to us. This is true of any jurisdiction. There are just different needs. You may not want the, notifications about the park or something. So you can just choose what you want, and it's not unique to us that there are different choices to be made. Like sometimes in Berkeley, you can choose, you don't want missing persons reports, for example, but you do want emergency road closures, or, you want police, but you don't want fire, whatever. That's not unusual to us. It's just part of the system that there's so much capability that as a resident, you decide what you want.
And I think part of the adoption of this system success of the adoption of the system is going to be dependent on our communication with the community, and really, we're going to have to do a bit of a public awareness campaign, which I would like to do around all things emergency-related this year, but it's so that folks can opt in, and we may have to have teenagers at the farmer's market guiding us through our devices so that we can, get your grandchildren, we all can get our children and grandchildren nieces and nephews to do whatever they need to do to get us logged into whatever accounts we should be on. So.
I guess I just think it'd be a little weird if we had it and the fire department didn't.
No, we definitely think that it is something that we would recommend they would adopt. But after looking at the system and its intricacies in terms of privacy, in terms of control about what messages go out, I think it behooves us to keep it limited to just our district. So what is the cost? Can you describe that to us?
Sure. So cost is solely based on census population. And I know in Kensington, it's a little bit, it's roughly 5,000, correct? That would qualify for Nixle's minimum price point. It's an annual cost, an annual reoccurring cost. It's a software as a service, so there's no physical equipment deployed. So essentially, for the police department or the fire department or anybody else to have access to the system is essentially just accessing it through internet-capable device. There's no limit to the number of administrators, the number of messages that you can push out. The cost for the system is $3,000 annually. And there would be a one-time setup or implementation of 8%, which is $240. So for the first year, it would be $3,240, and then any reoccurring year, it would be $3,000.
And that's for the length of the contract. There are small annual increases, so the longer we choose to contract, that the longer we lock in that price.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Are contracts any length of years, or are they a set number?
So our standard term is a 3-year agreement, but we can be flexible on that. So if you wanted to do, and we could cater to your community as well, by doing, say, like a 1 year with an option year. So you could lock in that price, and if you were unhappy with the service, you could walk away after the second year, no penalty. But if you were satisfied, you could, essentially renew for the second year with no increase.
Okay. That's the district's responsibility.
There's no cost to sign up for as a resident. There's no money that, it's not like you have to pay anything to receive the notifications.
Are there any cell phones anymore that get individual charges for text messaging? That's all outgoing.
I don't know, to be honest. I think
Yeah,
it is subject to the plan that individual is on as far as receiving a message.
Yes, so we can't guarantee that your particular phone plan, what your level of messaging is, so that is between the community member and their cell phone provider, but the cost is all borne by the district, and most recipients should not have any cost if you have a kind of a standard cell phone service plan that's available now.
If that is truly an issue, the residents have the ability to customize their profile. So if they don't want to receive text messages at all, they could limit it to emails.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Lussi, Dr. Lussi. Probably what we would seek to do is have an educational opportunity that we could talk through the system. If the board determines that they would like to procure the system, then we would have live options for folks to look at, and we definitely could maybe make it even part of March 17th. We can talk about, take a few minutes if community members are there and guide them through signing up for notifications, and we're certainly happy to talk to you. Yes.
What about us, some few of us community members who don't have cell phones, who can't text, and don't have computers, who do have landlines? Up north, people who do have landlines were not notified, and it was terrible situation. What do you plan to do for that?
Can I answer that question? Yes, I will. The question was, what about community members who do not have cellular devices or computers and use their landlines only? The county warning system, you are already, by nature of having a landline in your home, you are already opted into that system. So the county warning system will be activated for a major threat. And you would receive a call. It's a reverse 911 phone call, and you're already signed up for that.
Would we then, if we're going to send out a Nixle alert, also put the alert to the county warning system?
Yes, that would be.
Do they?
Because we have to make sure that we don't start relying only on Nixle, because there are people without computers or cell phones.
No, absolutely.
Would the county warning system take a notification from us and then send it back to only our residents?
Yes.
Really?
The county warning system does have the ability to geo-target the notifications. So if there was a situation specific to Kensington or Berkeley and the surrounding area, they could target the notification to,
If let's say our chief of police calls the county and says, I want you to send out this notice, they would have to approve that. They could say, well, I'm sorry, I don't think it warrants the county notification system.
Absolutely. If it's not a major life-threatening threat,
yeah.
then they don't, it must be
Yeah, very
life-threatening.
serious. So if it was a missing child, for example, our Nixle system might use that, but the county warning system would probably not make phone calls on that. But if it was obviously a major disaster, they probably would.
No. But, as Mr. Russell said, I mean, Amber Alerts happen for missing people. So, I mean, there are a variety of systems that are available. I mean, yes, it's definitely more cellular-based. All right, are there other questions? Oh, no.
Will it come up to the microphone, because I don't,
Yeah, that would probably be better, or we can repeat your questions for the tape.
There are some areas in Kensington and the Berkeley Hills where we don't get cell phone reception. What do we do about that?
In some cases, it's the old-fashioned system. I was at an American Chemical Society meeting on Tuesday night, and one member lost his house, and he was alerted by the police going around on the loudspeaker. And that's how he got out.
Regarding the fire department using Nixle, since the fire department is contracting with El Cerrito for services, would receiving El Cerrito Fire Department's Nixle notices, would that cover what our department would do, or does El Cerrito Fire have a separate contract from the police and whatever entities in El Cerrito?
I don't think we have a way of answering that question, to be honest. I don't think we know.
Well, he's shaking his head one way or another.
So as I know it, it's only the police department that has access to the Nixle system?
In El Cerrito?
Correct.
El Cerrito?
It would be my belief that, Kensington Fire Department would produce their own warning systems as their own district. I mean, they have a chief in common, but if we had Nixle, they had Nixle being El Cerrito Fire Department, and Kensington Fire Department also had Nixle, I think that they would be probably separate notification systems, but similar in terms of, depending on where the danger was.
Catherine Mercurio, sorry if I can project. First of all, I've been using Nixle for a very long time, and I use it not just, I don't just get notifications for Berkeley, but my daughter started college this year, so she's down in Orange County. So I actually get Nixle notifications for her area, which was really useful when they had the fires in Anaheim a few months ago, because I was able to know exactly what was happening throughout. So I'm a firm believer in Nixle. I love it. And I actually didn't know that I could get it through emails. I get it on my cell phone. And honestly, I think it took me all of 30 seconds to sign up on my cell phone. It's incredibly easy. But I do have a question regarding budget. I know you have some concerns with respect to there being two separate Nixle accounts, one with fire and one with police, but what I would say is, based on the cost, it still may make more sense to have one Nixle as opposed to two, but one of the things I wanted to ask that maybe Nathan might be able to answer is if truly it had to be two, would you give any price breaks if we have both the fire and the police opting in?
So that's actually a good question.
Thank you.
It's not $3,000 per account. The first instance would be $3,000, and then it would be a portion of that instance. So I'd have to figure out exactly what that would be, but it would be, in the range of about $500 to $1,000 for the second instance of Nixle.
So, oh yeah, Chief Hull.
Please use the mic, yeah, thanks.
Anthony Knight again. I am uncomfortable seeing this discussion being solely on the KPPCSD side without the input of the fire department. It's been brought up several times. I would really suggest that there be some kind of a joint meeting where they can voice their interest or disinterest, and the coordination can be settled without speculation on how this might work or might not work. Is that too radical, that you bring it to them and the two departments talk?
Well, we actually, we are two districts, and when I look at the administration of it, we can have discussion, but it really does behoove us. There are some issues of privacy and issues of control that our district then would be in charge of our account, and not bringing anyone else into it. Now, we may decide that it functions very well and it's very open for them to have access to our account. But I think this is something that we see as a standalone value, absolutely, for the community to cover difficulties that we have and to better prepare us in the case of an emergency.
Okay, so as a Kensington citizen, I see that as very one-sided and short-sighted. And I say again, I think I'd like to see you both in the same room. You can make those kinds of decisions afterwards, but right now I just see them as coming from you personally and not from any joint cooperation.
There's no decisions being made right now. We're just trying to get some information to the community.
Dave Spath. My question relates to the human resource implications on this. You know, how is it done? Are there multiple individuals who would be responsible for transmitting this information? What type of training is needed? And recognizing that we don't have a large body of individuals. We have police officers, we have a general manager, and we have a district administrator and one other individual. They're not there all the time. And is this a 24-hour operation? In other words, Nixle is always on, so it comes out during all hours of the day, including midnight or 2 in the morning. So my question is, how would that work in our jurisdiction, given our limitations in terms of human resources?
Sure. I'm happy to address that. So with Nixle, it allows you to grant access to as many people as you want. Not only can you use it from a computer, but you can also initiate a notification from your cell phone or tablet. Regarding your concern about receiving notifications in the middle of the night, Nixle is available to be used whenever it's needed. However, as a resident, you have the ability to set quiet hours, so you can determine if you want to never receive notifications from after 8 p.m. until 6 the next morning. You also have the ability to do a lot of customization with the notifications that you're receiving. So if you only want to receive the most pressing emergency notifications through Nixle, that's all you're going to get. The other part of your question was...
His issue is who's going to put the information into Nixle. That's what he's asking about.
Exactly. I mean, if it's a fire started at midnight and you wanted to go out on Nixle, who would be doing that from the district's perspective? Would it be the officer who's on the swing shift, who's probably the only one there? Or would the message go to the general manager, who then would initiate it? I mean,
Well, those kinds of things, the district itself would have to determine, but I think what Nathan can say, what he was trying to say is, it could be done from a police officer's cell phone, it could be done from the chief's home, it's cloud-based and on all the time, so if there's a officer and on duty, and there's a major incident that the community needs to be notified that there's someone on the loose, it could be, we set the protocol. The protocol could be that every officer had the ability to send an alert, or the protocol is that the officer contacts the chief and the chief sends out the alert. But it can be done at all hours from all kinds of places.
So that's a common practice from what I gather.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Is this website only, or is there an app also for the phones?
There is an app. The app is called Everbridge, which is a little bit confusing.
It's called Nixle, huh?
Everbridge is the parent company of Nixle. So within the app, it allows you to receive push notifications. So those are not text messages. You would receive a push notification through that app. There's actually a lot that the app will do. It creates essentially incident zones. So if somebody walked into an area where you had initiated a notification, they would get a push notification through that app. And again, it's called Everbridge is the app.
And that's a free download.
It's free download, yep.
And you can set your preferences and all that through that app as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Please use the mic, please use the mic.
Linda Lipscomb. How's that level? You hear me, Frank? I would like to know the scope. I would hate to see this gone into and that it turns into a next door kind of thing. Who's going to put it in and how? I just had a suggestion from Sergeant that maybe the best way to do it is have dispatch actually send it out. You call dispatch. Whoever is on calls dispatch and has dispatch. So I think what we need to have is information on the scope of it to avoid it becoming a source of contention and gossip. Limitation, I'm not done. Limitation on what kinds of notices will be sent out. Definition of who will be responsible for sending them out. And I'd like to echo what Anthony said, and that is I do think it's a good idea if you get a second bump for $500 and the other district is swimming in dough, hey, let them be first.
Well, this isn't a social media platform. It's very specific. It's an emergency notification system, community events, and of a certain caliber, and general alerts, let's say traffic safety, but that are not highly dangerous. And this would be controlled by the district board and, of course, the general manager and chief of police. And it's not, there is not going to be any sort of social response. It's not a call and response. We're telling you that the Arlington Avenue is closed down because a tomato truck fell over. We're telling you, unfortunately, that there's a lost child. We're telling you that the Matrix meeting is March 17th. This is, we would always demand, I believe, the same professionalism and protocol that we would demand of our agendas. So this is not going to delineate into anything other than what it was meant for, which is emergency notification. And the other thing is, I would request my other board members that we don't wait simply because, unfortunately, emergencies don't wait. And the sooner that we get on this system, the better coverage I think we have. It's not a panacea. It's not going to cover everything. What we're trying to do this year is cover a variety of what-ifs in all the different kinds of ways that people need to be notified and alerted. And I think if we've learned anything, unfortunately, from last year's fires in Napa, is that we need to do all we can so that people are warned quickly and for wherever they are. And so we're trying to meet them at the point that many, many people have access to cell phones, or maybe only have cell phones anymore. They've discontinued their landlines or operate, through email. And so that's what we're trying to cover.
Is there a differentiation between, say, emergency alerts and just a notification of a meeting? I mean, how is someone going to know, hey, this is important, or no, I don't really care about that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 3 levels of notification. There's the emergencies, there's advisories, which would be more, traffic related or day-to-day stuff, boil water notice, things like that, and then community for event-related information. When you initiate the message, you determine what priority level. As a resident, you can customize what levels you want to receive. So if you don't want to receive anything but emergencies, you simply turn off the advisories and community notifications. And that will limit the amount of messaging that you're receiving.
And those notifications are color-coded, is that correct?
Yep. So red for alert, yellow for advisory, green.
When they come in?
So when it comes in on your phone, it won't be color-coded because it's a text message.
Right.
There's no way for it to necessarily be color-coded. But via email, when you receive it on an email, it will show you the level and the color.
And via Google search, it will.
With Google search, it's only emergency alerts.
Yes, it's only the most dire.
Right.
So, yes, please.
Currently use Nixle, and how long have they been on Nixle? The question was, what agencies in our area currently use Nixle, and how long have they been on Nixle?
So I've been with Nixle for going on 3 years now. It's hard for me to determine how long El Cerrito has been on, but they've been on since I've been with Nixle, so at least 3 years. San Pablo, same thing. They've been on for at least 3 years. Berkeley has been using it for more than 3 years. I worked with UC Berkeley initially when I started, so they've been on it for about 2.5 years. Albany does not use it. Emeryville does not use it. They rely on the county system. They're only basically concerned about the emergency level notifications. I live in Alameda. There's 3 departments in Alameda that use it. San Leandro PD uses it. I've worked with the city of Tracy. I've worked with Dublin, Walnut Creek, Martinez. So those are the ones off the top of my head in the East Bay, but there's a lot more in the surrounding North Bay that use it as well. I worked with basically everybody but San Rafael on that side uses it.
And this is police and fire, or mostly police? What is your experience?
It's typically city, police, fire, and then like public works or parks and rec. So there's a lot of different use cases for it, but primarily it's law enforcement.
So I'd like to make a motion
Did Chief
that,
Hall want to say anything?
pardon?
Did Chief Hall want to say anything about this?
And I spoke to Chief Hull before we invited Mr. Russell to be here, and he spoke of his willingness to engage and use the service. I would like to make a motion that we authorize General Manager Constantoros to explore entering into an agreement with Nixle.
Could I ask, what is the opinion of the police department on Nixle? What do the police think about Nixle? Or at least Ricky Hull.
Yeah, well, I can say I did not take a survey of the officers or the employees. However, I have seen El Cerrito using Nixle, And from what I can see, it looks to be positive. I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that the information that's being pushed out by Nixle is vetted, so we don't have an accident like we had in Hawaii or some other false alarm that could be made. But it is one more avenue to push out information to ensure everybody's getting noticed or notified of the information that the district would have you be interested in having you know. So, but my position on it, I think it's a valuable and worthwhile platform.
Thank you.
Yes. It's okay, I'll repeat.
I'm going to repeat the question. The question is, does Nixle have any way to contact people that do not have a landline, or that only have a landline? That would repeat the question.
So there is a way, but I feel like it would be redundant with the county. There is, Nixle will allow you to do reverse 911 calls, but it's more expensive. And it would also be redundant considering that there was already a reverse 911 system in place for the county.
Okay.
I mean, Nixle is designed to supplement the landline system that does exist. So everybody, because you're a resident of the county, is automatically subscribed to the, is that correct, Rachel? Everyone subscribes automatically to the reverse 911?
Yes, if you have a landline, but if you want other notifications through the county, you must go to the website or send in a form to receive notifications another way. So, for example, I went to the Contra Costa County website and registered my cell phone, and with that system. So. All right, I have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I would like to not necessarily limit it to a one-year agreement if General Manager Constanturos thinks that this is, and Chief Hull think this is worth, a longer consideration, or a 1 or 2 year with an option for a third, or whatever. So I don't want to limit it just to 1 year, I guess.
I did not in the motion.
Oh, it says it here.
I know. My motion was that we authorize General Manager Constanturos to enter into an agreement with Nixle.
Sure. And I do think that it's worthwhile to incorporate information for the fire district and potentially include them in any kind of meeting so they could be educated. But I also know that we're responding to some very serious and pointed concerns of residents that we've been hearing about since last year about improving our own notification capability. So I agree that we should move forward, but obviously it'd be great to inform the fire district and involve them in information so that they can make their own decisions. But I don't want to hold us up because it is very important. We've heard from citizens that they wanted us to find better ways to communicate with them, and particularly around emergency situations. So I second the motion.
May I ask for a point for some clarification, please?
Yes.
Initially, I thought that you said direct the manager to explore, and then it seemed more recently that you said direct him to enter into a contract.
Oh, excuse me.
There's a difference because he has $5,000. Of course. The manager currently has a $5,000 contracting authority, and normally he would bring back to the board, if it's 2 years, he would need to bring it back to the board unless you in advance give him that authority. So I just want to make sure we all know what you're doing.
All right.
I would prefer a one-year agreement just because I'd like to evaluate how many people sign up, and I know people have said they like it, but I'd rather see after a year how effective it's been, and then if people like it, how many people sign up. Because I don't have any idea in the larger population how popular it is. So I'd be more comfortable with 1 year and then evaluate at the end to see if it really did what it needed to do.
With an option to extend the pricing. And I think that we would need to incorporate a plan on, a public outreach campaign to get people to sign up, which I think Nixle can help us with. But I think that's part of the planning then. It's an important part of the piece. If that's going to be the judgment, is going to be how many people sign up for it, then we need to, spend a good part of that first year getting people to sign up for it.
Do we need further clarification, Ann?
Just a bit. Am I to understand per Director Deppe that the motion would be to direct the town manager, the general manager, to enter into a one-year contract with an option for a second year?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion passes 4-0. And I have no hesitancy that should the fire department and the police department agree that we can work together and have a Nixle contract, that they could, I'm certainly glad to go to them and request that they pay half the cost of the full agreement, the coverage. So thank you, Mr. Russell. We look forward to working with you, and we'll see you again. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you.
All right. We now will move on to, or back to item 5, an update on police staffing. So, are you? Oh, do we? Oh, you have a presentation. All right.
Well, the slide.
A slide?
Sorry, Ted. Boy.
We'll take a look first.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, it just needs to warm up a bit. Once it shines, if visually it's not enough, then we can. Well, what I'll do is I'll just start. Does everyone have the handout that was on the table in the back? The picture that was about to be projected is simply this chart that was on the table in the back. And what this chart addresses is, it gives a little bit of history on the staffing levels that the police department has experienced from January 2015 to date. What I want everyone to focus on are the color codings so that they understand what the blue means when it says on staff. On staff simply means how many officers we had on the books as paid employees. The brown staff means how many officers that were able to come to work and work as a patrol officer. Now, there are several reasons as to why we had a full staff, but yet not every employee was able to come to work in the capacity of a police officer. So what I want to focus here is we have been working for several months and throughout, for several different periods, with only 6 officers, or 5 officers and 1 chief. So this isn't the first time that we've experienced this. I couldn't find the numbers previous to 2015, but prior to the turn of the century, I believe we were at our lowest point. We were probably at, or right around then, I remember us being down to 4 officers and a chief. So this is not new territory for the agency. What I would like to address about the lack of staffing is, first I want to emphasize that the district is still being patrolled 24 hours a day by a Kensington police officer. Now, that has some positive effects, well, some negative effects. Well, where you'll see residents won't see or will not see a patrol car patrolling through their neighborhood as much as they became used to when we were fully staffed. And what I mean by fully staffed is the budget is budgeted for 9 officers and a chief. So there's 10 positions there. And when we have a full staff, you're going to see a lot more police activity than what you're seeing when we're short-staffed. When you have a short staff, you're going to see less patrol activity. Like many probably have seen less traffic enforcement. And we have to kind of account for that, because what we're having right now is we have 1 officer on scene working during the day, 1 officer working during the night. We have 1 sergeant that's covering for several hours between those shifts. So another effect of having a short staff is the overtime budget can easily be exceeded, because officers have various reasons where they're not coming in, whether they're taking vacations, taking sick, and other reasons. And when that happens, those shifts have to be covered. To date, well, our current budget for the overtime was projected to be $75,000. Unfortunately, given the staffing levels that we have approximately spent $99,000 to date, and we still have 4.5 more months to go. So now staffing as far as patrol, as far as crime is concerned, everyone's familiar with what occurred to turn of the new year with all the vandalisms that the district suffered. Had I been able to anticipate that action, I could have scheduled anywhere from 2 to 4 officers to be working at graveyards in order to prevent that crime. If we had a full staff and there were either 2 or 3 officers working, there's no guarantee that we could have prevented that crime. But it would raise the probability that maybe those suspects would have saw a patrol car, and that would have been enough to prevent them from doing what they did. As far as the staffing levels are concerned, I have been addressing staffing since I was first promoted into the interim chief of police. This conversation has been ongoing, and it's still ongoing today. The current idea to deal with the attrition, we built the reserve program specifically to deal with the attrition rate that the police department will go through. So if we are losing officers, we have an opportunity to pull in officers from the reserve program. Currently, we're discussing several other options where officers that can potentially come and work for the district. When I say the other options, I mean we have the reserve program, we have the police academy cadets, we have laterals who would be interested. We also have what's called an annuitant, which is a retired police officer that can come work so many hours a year. So we are currently in discussions about these options, and I fully expect that a decision will be made soon, and we will be bringing on a new employee in order to bring our staffing levels a little bit higher. We're nowhere near what we're budgeted for at this point, but we're working on it. We are, one of the issues that we have with bringing on new officers is they have to go through a process. They have to go through a background, they have to go through a medical, and they have to go through a psychological. From the beginning to the end of that process, it could take anywhere from 4 to 8 months. So given that reality, we are looking on ways to how we can get officers on as soon as we can so that they can start working. We have to give consideration to the matrix study, which everyone understands is going on. By the time that matrix study is complete, and if we were to get a new officer, whatever decision is going to be made, it would be easier just to bring on someone that's prepared to go now. Most police departments at this moment are experiencing problems staffing their police departments to their budgeted levels. I don't know if it's the career is just not interesting or a sought-after career to the next generation coming up. There's been a lot of instances because of the lack of interest in this job as a career. A lot of agencies have had to drop their standards in order to have people that can qualify to even go through their police academies. So to wrap this all up, what the police department has experienced since I've been in the position is we've had 5 applicants for a reserve position. 2 applicants have been rejected, 2 applicants have been hired, and we have 1 applicant right now that's going through the background process. So hopefully we can have a decent pool and a big enough pool to replace officers as they're leaving the agency. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Chief, you mentioned 3 categories of Linda Lipscomb. Thank you, Chief, for acknowledging that the presence of officers on the street, if we are able to put them there, is a significant deterrent to the occurrence of crime. Certainly that's been our experience in the past. I believe we've been very, very stable, so thank you for that. In respect of the options for recruitment, I'm curious as to whether annuitants, reserves, and cadets require the same vetting time period, since they are vetted in the course of either past service or currently as a reserve, or I know that they are also vetted at the time that they go into the academy. So do they have to have, in other words, is there a new period that is initiated for each agency that they join?
The answer to that is yes, because you don't know what has transpired between a person's employment at one agency and then the time that they decide to leave to go to another agency. So the reserve program that we currently have, they've already been to that process. They just simply need to be hired. like I said, the background, the medical and the psychological can take anywhere from 4 to 8 months, if not longer. And even if we had laterals or retired people or cadets, they'd still have to go through the same process.
Are we close?
Excuse me?
Are we close to hiring?
I would say yes. Yes. A lateral is a officer that's currently employed at one department as a police officer and wants to go to work for another police department. Yes.
Excuse me, there's been a request that everybody go to the mic for hearing and recording purposes.
You mentioned that it takes several months for all of the vetting to take place, up to 8 months. Is this before one of these persons are hired, or is it after they're hired? That clearly it must be before.
It is. The answer to that question is it is before they're hired. We cannot put a police officer on the street with the authority from the state without having all 3 of those processes completed.
Catherine Mercurio again. Could you tell me the process of trying to, of outreach, of communications, so that anyone that might be out there that, for instance, is wanting to make a lateral move, how would they know that you're looking for somebody? The same is true for all the other sources, like the reserves and the cadet program. Sorry, I don't know as much about these programs as I perhaps should, but just how do people know that there's a need here?
In the past, we've advertised on the state special district platform, their website. We've sent officers to different academies to actually speak to academy classes and recruit. And it obviously operates by word of mouth also. One of the issues that we have to confront here, and it's always been an issue, is the salaries that we have here for the district compared to any other agency in the immediate area. That's another point of discussion that's ongoing right now. So that it's going to be real difficult to get an officer to take a $20,000 or $30,000 pay cut from one department to come to another. Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe, I think this was given to me, do you believe that some of the officers may be leaving because of concern of all the talk of contracting out to other agencies for police officers?
Did everyone hear the question? The question was, have we had officers leaving because of the talk of contracting out? The answer to that is no. We have not had any officers leave because of any conversation surrounding the Matrix investigation or the prospect of contracting out. The only reason that I have seen officers leave, either through retirement, for administrative reasons, or they wanted more money, and so they went to other departments that had higher salaries.
Were you asking if officers are worried about their jobs and whether they're going to leave? We do have people that are looking. They're not happy right now. So I'm not going to tell you names of the officers, no. Oh, Keith Barrow, sorry. I'm the POA president. No, we have people that are looking just because they don't know if the department's going to be here in 6 months. So, all right.
Cyrus Modafi. I was wondering, is there anything that the council or Kensington itself could do to help with, like, because it's pretty clear the staffing has sort of been on this decay and has not been going up. Is there anything that, like the population could do to be supportive and help that?
Any support that the population or the district and the residents want to give to the police department, by all means, we'll take any support and any help we can get.
Anthony Knight, once again. Chief, it's been my impression since I've lived in Kensington that we always had 2 officers on the street at any given time, and that was sort of a fundamental of police work because an officer could get into trouble and would need backup. I'm under the impression now with the short staffing that we've given that up and that there are individual officers who are out there on their own. So I'd like to ask you, is it part of the present staffing that we do have single officers without support?
Thank you for the question. It is true that we have single officers working an entire shift. However, it is not true that they do not have support. They do have support. When we made the transition from the Richmond Police Dispatch to the Albany Police Dispatch, one of the things that was forefront on my mind was officer safety. That's why I was insistent that we be on the same radio channel with either El Cerrito or Albany, because since we share borders with both those cities, if an officer that's working alone is in need of cover, all they have to do is say so on the radio. Working Kensington is like a beat, and most beats are just covered by one officer. So there would never be a time when a Kensington officer, although they may be alone in working the district, that they will never, ever be without cover. That's the officers with the Albany Police Department now will respond. Prior to that transition, it was the officers of the El Cerrito Police Department that responded. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, yes, sir.
Being one of the people who is challenged in terms of hearing, that is a major concern of mine in these meetings, to be able to understand all of the words of the people who are speaking. So one of the problems is that you're addressing different audiences. You're addressing that audience sometimes, and then your microphone is right in front of you. Other times you're addressing somebody like this, and the microphone is to the side. Wherever you're looking, that's the way your voice, wherever you're looking, that's the way your voice carries well to the microphone. And I'm afraid that is a problem with a lot of the people that have been speaking. But I'd like to go back to your slide, which you've kept on through this entire discussion. So I think you must think this is an important slide. And I would like to understand it a little bit better. Now, I'm doing the same thing, because we do have everybody scattered around in different places. In order to be heard well, I need to talk away from both of you, everybody, to look at the slide and talk about it. As I look at the slide, it looks as though in this year, 2 months of this year, I guess it is, there seem to be either 5 or 6 officers on duty, the darker part of the bar in each instance. But what I understood Chief Hall to be saying was that there's one officer during the day on duty and one officer at night on duty, and their backup is backup from other neighboring police departments. But that only is 2 officers in the course of a day, and I don't quite understand why there are 5 or 6 indicated over there. So I'd like to have that clarified. There are no officers on staff, apparently, who are not on duty. So I would like to understand, is it 1 on a day and 1 in the evening? Or is it like 5 on duty or in the course of a day? Please try to make this a little more clear for all of us as to the level of staffing now and the most recent part of it.
Thank you for that observation. The current schedule is set like this. For 4 days out of the week, for day shift, there's either 1 or 3 employees working. So for the day shift, for 4 days out of the week, you have a patrolman, you have a sergeant, and then you have me, the interim chief of police. So for all police activities that occur, the cover will come from one of us that are working, that's on duty. If we have an incident that is so big that we need more personnel than what we have, then by all means, we will request officers from either El Cerrito or Albany to assist. So when it comes to the weekends or when it comes to graveyards, we have a sergeant that's here for part of the day. He's also here for part of the evening. I don't want to be too specific because I don't want to give out schedules. But I want to make clear that, yes, there are times here in Kensington that an officer will be working alone. Even if we were at full staffed, right, even if we had 10 officers, that would still happen from time to time. It's just happening more frequently now because we have less officers, less staffing, and individuals still have a right to their vacation. Individuals still may call in sick. So that affects the budget and the schedule in several ways. It's causing overtime, and it's causing someone else to have to cover that shift. And more times than not, that person's going to be working alone. But working alone is not, I'm simply saying that there's 1 officer logged on in Kensington. But if there was a police incident, there's officers from other cities that will come to assist, the same way we go to their cities to assist them.
Dave Spath again. I mean, it's good police practice, however, to have an officer on duty and then supervision, correct? I mean, you did mention the fact that there was, at times, supervision with a sergeant, but you only have 1 sergeant, and he can't work 7 days a week. So it's not an ideal situation by any means that a good part of the time, maybe even half the time, that you only have 1 officer with no supervision. I recognize on the graveyard shift that historically, I think 4 hours you've had just 1 officer with no supervision. But my understanding, and certainly with the ad hoc committee's review, that good police practice is such that you always have a supervisor and you always have an officer on duty at the same time.
That is a correct observation. Let me make a statement as to how the Kensington Police Department has addressed that concern. There has never been a time when any supervisor at this department have not made themselves available to any officer 24 hours a day. And what I mean by that, I have a sergeant here who will work his shift as well as I. And as we go home, our phones are always on and always we're always open to phone calls or coming in whenever we had to felt it needed. You have two types of supervision. You have direct supervision, which is, you're right, there's a supervisor working on duty and an officer, or there's indirect supervision, where the officer can simply call either the sergeant or me to discuss what's going on. We will decide whether or not it's necessary for us to come in, because all the phone calls we receive, it's not always not necessary that we respond. Some of the phone calls we receive, it absolutely is necessary that we respond. But yes, in an optimal situation, that's what we would have.
Andrew Gutierrez. I spend a lot of time looking at data. And what I see is a problem of economy of scale. If one officer goes out, that's 10%. 2, 20, 3, 30. And what we see in the graphs here is that starting in mid-year of 2016, we were down to 6, 7 officers. And it's continued that way through 2017. Now, if there was a larger pool of officers, say a larger department, they could rearrange schedules, and that would provide coverage on a more continuous basis. And so all the discussion that we're really having here really concerns the fact that we do not have the economy of scale to cover these changes in discrepancy. Now, officers have their lives, and they have their careers, and I would like to see them protected. But it has to be on merit. So when we start thinking about options, we should think in terms of also what's best for the community. And I think the biggest issue that we have faced is this business that the department is too small. The pool of officers is too small. And that is seen in the bar graphs starting from 2015.
Just a quick statement on, give you a real life scenario. Over the holiday season, we had an individual who had signed up for vacation and wanted to take a vacation. There was a second individual that wanted to take a vacation. The first individual that wanted to take a vacation sacrificed his vacation, worked through the holiday season so that the other individual can go on vacation. This is the type of character it takes when you're working for a small department. I don't expect the staffing level to be this small forever. This is a time that we're going through, and we just have to get to the other end. And as I said before, this is not the first time that we've been this small. I've seen it. We had less employees than what we have now. And as far as the other comment about scheduling, Mr. Gutierrez is absolutely right. If we had enough hours, officers, employees, we can change the schedule that would work better in the interest of the district. As I made a reference to the overtime budget earlier, had we had enough officers and the schedule can go to a different schedule, the overtime budget, the overtime that you see the district spending would be reduced. But we just don't have the number of officers to do that.
Celia Conkus. I would like to mention some of the things that Marilyn Stolen had in the comments that she had prepared. And she writes, excuse me, according to, the wrong glasses. According to the 2011 Municipal Service Report for Law Enforcement Services in Contra Costa County, quote, "The number of sworn officers per capita is a traditional indicator of service level. There are no established state or national standards for police staffing levels." In reference to the cities and counties, and the cities of the county surveyed, the report states, agencies county-wide, and that is, averaged 1.8 sworn officers per 1,000 residents. 1.8. It's 1.18 sworn officers per 1,000 residents. We have in Kensington 1.2 ratio with a staff of 6. So Kensington exceeds the number of sworn officers in other districts. The following crime cities have a ratio lower than ours per 1,000 residents: Clayton, Lafayette, Moraga, Orinda, Danville, San Ramon, and Saratoga. Saratoga has less than half the sworn officers per capita that Kensington has. The reason she added Saratoga is because Saratoga is in the top 10 safest cities in California, along with Moraga, Danville, and Orinda. The numbers, for these numbers, it appears that the number of officers on staff doesn't imply or necessarily correlate with safety or crime statistics in our community.
Just a small comment upon that, Linda Lipscomb. I have heard that quotation. In fact, I've looked at those numbers. And I will remind you that those towns which you mentioned do not lie between Richmond and Oakland and high crime areas. You can look at the stats on the number of Part 1 crimes in the FBI, I think it's table 8, in order to find out the proportion of crimes. We are seeing that unprotected, we are to an extent unprotected because our officers are stretched. They don't have the physical presence upon the streets. It used to be, if you came through town, you saw black and white, and you weren't going to make any trouble right then. Well, that is our problem. We are located in very close to high-density areas, very much not like Los Altos, Moraga, Clayton, very different location. And we're seeing the effects of it. I can only imagine having a staff, taking it in half, and having to have people stretch around in order to work all that overtime. It's demoralizing, and in the end, it has not produced the safety that we are entitled to. We're budgeted for 10, and we should have the 10.
I do want to point out that the thoroughfare, Arlington, that has a lot of traffic coming from El Cerrito and also going through Berkeley, is not exactly a high crime area, right? I'm not talking about down 2 blocks from Del Norte BART. Those people are not driving Arlington Avenue. The people who are driving... The people who live in the El Cerrito Hills live in homes that are very comparable to what we have in Kensington. Their incomes are very comparable. Their education level is very comparable. They're pretty much like Kensington. The North Berkeley area, from Arlington, from Marin Circle to Kensington, those homes are even more expensive than Kensington. Those are people who are not exactly criminals, okay? So I think, you know, when you're painting with a broad brush that Berkeley and El Cerrito are high crime areas, some areas are, but not the areas that are adjacent to Kensington.
I wasn't going to speak on this point, but I can't resist Celia's comments. What we're talking about is the soft underbelly of Kensington, San Pablo Avenue. Try driving from San Pablo Avenue and Mosier, up Mosier to the Arlington. See how long it takes you. This is the thoroughfare, not from El Cerrito, not from Berkeley, but from below. See how long it takes you to drive around the cemetery, from the top of Fairmount, from down by Fat Apples. That's where the danger is. That's where I'd like to see the patrol coming from. I absolutely agree that there is no danger coming along from El Cerrito and Berkeley, but that really, I'm sorry, I sort of lost it there. I wanted to ask the chief another question. Some time ago, we had a survey done of the police department by Brown Taylor. One of the important findings that he came up with was that there was a morale problem in the police department. This was a public report of his morale problem in the police department. And Chief, I apologize for putting you on the spot with this, but I would like to know if we have a similar morale problem now. It's natural to think that this might be the case with 4 officers gone out of 6. We don't know why these 4 are gone, at least I don't, and nobody I talk to does. And it's natural to think they're leaving because it's not a happy work environment. So could you address that, please?
Well, let me begin my answer like this. No matter how large or small an agency may be, there are always morale issues. The larger question should be, if there is an issue, how is it affecting scheduling? Are people taking time off excessively? Are people not coming in to work their shifts? We haven't seen that. When you have officers that's as few as we have, what I'm concerned about is burnout. It's always fun to get the overtime in the beginning. Everybody's full of energy and they're happy to get it, but at some point they want to start spending time with their families. They may have things that they're scheduled to do off duty, and they may be missing their opportunities to get that done. So.
Andrew Gutierrez here. I think what that speaks to is the fact that the pool of officers is too small. What it speaks to is the fact that the pool of officers is too small. And when you have these kinds of vacancies in availability, and you do have this burnout because they're working too hard and whatever, it just means that if you had a larger pool, you could rearrange the schedules, you could accommodate a lot more of these issues. So in a sense, what it's really speaking to is the possibility that if we can get the same level of service with the same station, with the same service at roughly the same cost, that would be a good option. And that the current officers that we have can apply for the jobs in that service. So we're really talking about too small a pool that's causing most of the problems that we are seeing. Thank you.
Okay. Eileen, go ahead.
I'd like to say a few words on police staffing. We all know that police services are vital to Kensington, as they are to any community. Please assure that our community is safe, and more often than not, the engagement of our officers with residents contributes to the harmony of our community. The work of officers is not an easy job, but it's a critically important job. In a time when police departments throughout California are struggling to maintain fully staffed forces, a small department like ours faces particular challenges. And to that end, President Sheriff Watt and I have been meeting regularly with General Manager Tony Constaturas and Interim Chief of Police Ricky Hull to address our police staffing and recruitment needs. Maintaining a full roster of officers in the face of injuries, vacation, training, and administrative leaves is particularly problematic for a small department like Kensington. We do not have the funds to hire beyond our budgeted level for officers in order to maintain a cushion to fill for unexpected vacancies. Retirements amplify these problems. Indeed, in the fall, there was community opposition when Interim Chief Hull suggested hiring a reserve officer in anticipation of one or more vacancies. As a matter of simple math, the loss of one officer will have a disproportionate impact compared to a larger force. It also takes considerable time and money to recruit and vet candidates. In the last several months, there have been numerous stories about increasing problems that cities are having with police staffing. During our negotiation with Albany on dispatch, Chief McQuiston said that he teaches at police academies and enrollment is down even with lowering of standards. He attributed this to more opportunities in a good economy and the increased scrutiny of police. The Desert Sun reported that open position for law enforcement professionals increased over 600% from 2010 to 2015 based on the Peace Officer Standards and Training government job listings. A December article in Berkeley Side said that Berkeley police staffing levels have reached a crisis point, and Chief Andy Greenwood is quoted as saying, "We're going to have to rethink a bit of how we do business." While I and other lay people think that being a police officer would be a highly desirable position because of our low crime rate, I am told that it's not attractive to those who are interested in a career in law enforcement because we lack opportunities to work in specialized investigative units, and our small force means fewer opportunities for advancement. I've compared salaries on Transparent California, and it shows that our salaries are considerably lower, both for base and also the opportunities that overtime can provide for total pay. Compared to Albany, Berkeley, El Cerrito, and Richmond, the total pay is much higher in those jurisdictions with overtime and other pay as well. Palo Alto is now offering $25,000 bonuses on top of starting salaries of $100,000 to $119,000. This is the competitive environment that we're in. And while our retirement benefits are more generous than others, young officers are focused more on salary and not retirement benefits, especially with the high cost of housing. So let's be clear. Our longstanding problem of maintaining a fully staffed force is aggravated by conditions that are much bigger than Kensington itself. Indeed, these ongoing challenges are among the reasons that the board voted to bring in Matrix to thoroughly analyze our police service options so that we can have public discussions grounded in reality and facts on these critical issues. In the meantime, we have a problem that must be addressed. By way of background, as Interim Chief Hull explained, there are basically three options to hire a police officer. We can try to recruit from police academy, but those academies are having lower enrollment and fewer graduates than historically they've had. They will also need training, which takes quite a bit of time, and when we have done that with some young officers, they have gone on to other opportunities and making quite a bit more money than they could here. We could hire from the Officer Reserve Program, and historically, for a variety of reasons, that has been an option that has been attractive in Kensington. We also have had success with the reserve officer, and I know that Interim Chief Hull has worked hard to maintain an active reserve program. Another option is to hire a reserved officer, as Interim Chief Hull mentioned, and this is an option that's been explored casually in the past, but given the current situation, it's essential that General Manager Constantouris and Chief Hull vigorously explore these options for recruiting additional officers. This must be their primary priority until minimum staffing is restored, and I would like to request that until this is accomplished, they report back to the board each month in public session on the project that they are making on these recruiting options. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Chief Hull, who has been actively interested in our staffing levels since he was appointed in December of 2016. And believe me that our general manager and the chief of police have considered this vital and have been paying attention to this issue for many months. Unfortunately, when you look at the graphing, you'll realize that in the last 3 years and 2 months, we have only had since October where our on-staff matched our officers that were on duty. So we typically had 2 or 3 officers for whatever reason, some absolutely through no fault of their own, but were injuries or administrative leave that prevented them from being on duty, but were still on our payroll. So that makes it a little bit more complicated in a small agency like ours, because we often don't know the outcome of those leaves. Will the officer be coming back to us? Will the officer be retiring? We're often in limbo as a department to know what happened. And unfortunately, when our reserve policy has a reserved department has a rejection rate of 40%, you can see, and that's not hiring an officer, that's just putting them in the reserve, that there are some, unfortunately, some candidates who are too problematic to bring on board. So that means that it's just difficult to find the kind of officers that we want to bring to you to maintain the quality of the department. So I thank our staff and the chief for, general manager and chief for continuing to do good work and explore this issue. So we're going to move on to the final item on the agenda this evening, which is just simply the meetings for and the calendar for the coming year. I supplied some mock-up, this should say sample, it's on the back table. And what I would like to propose is that I work with Director Deppie and that we create a color-coded calendar of meetings for the coming year, 2018, that can be uploaded to the website and then provided in the handout.
I don't know if we can color code them, but we can certainly create the meeting.
Okay, I can't color code.
Well, I'm sure it's a pretty, I don't know, I'd have to find out.
Okay.
My guess is that the meetings are displayed in a very standard format, at least my understanding is, and
maybe we can change the color of the font.
I don't know if we can change it by the type of meeting. I'll look into it.
All right, but I'm hoping that we can have a more complete calendar.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
I'd love the upcoming meetings feature, but I would like something that projects the year out in advance so that folks can mark their calendars and make sure they don't schedule vacations that coincide with our meetings.
Absolutely.
It could be uploaded as a document, potentially.
Pardon?
It could be uploaded as a document, potentially.
That is true, and we will include. Once the calendar is completed, a hard copy will be included in next month's agenda if the rest of the board members concur. Yes.
I have a question. Would you like me to start sending out periodic emails to our mailing list about the upcoming matrix presentation?
I will work to draft something that we can send out a variety of ways.
Oh, thank you for covering that, Sylvia. And if you'll cover all the formats for reaching the community, that will be great.
Yeah, I'll discuss that with the GM to make sure we get it out.
Wonderful. So that is March 17th, but to remind you, we do not have another board meeting in February, but we meet again on March 8th. So I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to hearing from you.